Welcome again to our evening slots in Malaysia and our afternoon slot here in Mauritius, and from the morning to the midday slots in the other parts of the world. So we can say the Mangalacharana to the 6 Swamis together. Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipunam Saddharma Samstapako Lokana Mitakarino Tribhuvane Manyo Saranya Karo Radha Krishna Padaravinda Bhajana Nande Namataliko Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako. In the translation, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis, namely Shri Sanatan Goswami, Shri Rupa Goswami, Shri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Shri Raghunath Das Goswami, Shri Jiva Goswami, and Shri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures, with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus they are honored all over the 3 worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of, because they are absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. So you may repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So we are continuing with chapter 1, which is called the characteristics of pure devotional service. And I'd just like to request the Krishna Prema Prabhu to put page number 3 onto the screen, because I just want to explain something a little bit here.
Sure, Maharaj.
Yes, it's the beginning of the chapter.
Beginning of the chapter. Okay.
Chapter 1. Yes.
Which
Beginning
paragraph?
of the chapter. It's the 3rd paragraph.
3rd paragraph. Okay.
Yes, yeah, you're right there.
Okay.
Keep it there. Take it a little up. I want the numbers 1 to 6.
Okay.
Go further. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Now, yesterday we completed number 1, which is called Kleshagni. Pure devotional service brings immediate relief from all kinds of material distress. So this order from number 1 to 6, it sort of changes a little bit differently in the chapter 1 itself, but it's appropriate in its change within the chapter. So today, we're going to do number 2, pure devotional service at the beginning of all auspiciousness, which means subhadha. And we're going to couple it with a number 5. This is number 5. In other words, they go together. Yes. And number 2. So you'll find that in the explanation for the next 2 sections, it comes in that order. Pure devotional service is the beginning of all auspiciousness, number 2, which is called Subhada. And number 5, those in pure devotional service derive even the concept of liberation, which is called Moksha Lagudikrit. And then tomorrow we will cover number 3, 4, and 6, and they come in that order thereafter. Now, tomorrow is actually, okay, 1 minute. Today is 2 and 5. Tomorrow the order will be number 4, and then number 3, and then number 6. In other words, today is 2 and 5, tomorrow is 4 first, then 3, and then 6. That's the order Srila Prabhupada gave us after this. In other words, if we switch this 6, the numbering may change, but it doesn't change in the explanation thereafter. Okay? So let's get to number 2, and we're going to begin to read. And we're on page number 8. It says, Krishna consciousness is all auspicious, or is the beginning of all auspiciousness, which is number 2, Subhada. So now I am reading. Srila Rupa Goswami has given a definition of auspiciousness. He says that actual auspiciousness means welfare activities for all the people of the world. At the present moment, groups of people are engaged in welfare activities in terms of society, community, or nation. Krishna Premapada, is the volume okay from my side?
Maharaj, is very clear. It's fine.
Okay. So I am reading again. At the present moment, groups of people are engaged in welfare activities in terms of society, community, or nation. There is even an attempt in the form of the United Nations for World Health Activity. But due to the shortcomings of limited national activities, such a general mass welfare program for the whole world is not practically possible. The Krishna consciousness movement, however, is so nice that it can render the highest benefit of the entire human race. Everyone can be attracted by this movement, and everyone can feel the result. Therefore, Rupa Goswami and other learned scholars agree that a broad propaganda program for the Krishna consciousness movement of devotional service all over the world is the highest humanitarian welfare activity. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Tadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So here in this particular wonderful second characteristic of Subhadha, that pure devotional service is the beginning of all auspiciousness. There are 3, you could say, auspicious activities in pure devotional service. So when we say activity, we also indicate someone who's doing the activity. So the first activity here, which is mentioned, is to spread or preach or propagate Krishna consciousness all over the world as the highest humanitarian welfare activity. So that indicates who is doing that activity. That indicates the preacher. So therefore, devotional service brings all auspiciousness, or is the beginning of all auspiciousness for others. But how does it bring all auspiciousness? The preacher brings auspiciousness from his heart because of his Krishna consciousness and offers Krishna consciousness to others. So that's the first part of that. Now I'm going to the next paragraph, which will be the second feature of auspiciousness and pure devotional service. It's the next paragraph. Put it onto the screen. How the Krishna consciousness movement can attract the attention of the whole world, and how each and every man can feel pleasure in this Krishna consciousness is stated in the Padma Purana as follows. A person who is engaged in devotional service in full Krishna consciousness is to be understood to be doing the best service to the whole world and to be pleasing everyone in the world. In addition to human society, he is pleasing even the trees and animals because they are also attracted by such a movement. A practical example of this was shown by Lord Chaitanya when he was traveling to the forest of Jharikanda in central India for spreading his Sankirtan movement. The tigers, the elephants, the deer, and all the other wild animals joined him and were participating in their ways by dancing and chanting Hare Krishna. So this is the second feature of all auspiciousness in devotional service. And the first one is the preacher, and he preaches Krishna consciousness. The second one is that it pleases everyone. It attracts everyone and anyone, not only human beings, but all species of life. So that's the second feature. Now we get to the third feature. It's on the screen, next paragraph. Furthermore, a person engaged in Krishna consciousness acting in devotional service can develop all the good qualities that are generally found in the demigods. It is said by Sukadev Goswami in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 18th chapter, verse 12. My dear king, persons who have unflinching faith in Krishna and are without any duplicity can develop all the good qualities of the demigods. On account of a devotee's high grade of consciousness, even the demigods like to live with him, and therefore it can be understood that the qualities of the demigods have developed within his body. So just to recount, the first feature is to preach Krishna consciousness, so therefore the preacher brings auspiciousness and is auspicious. The second feature, which I read prior to this, is that it attracts everyone. Krishna consciousness attracts everyone through the preacher. And the third one is when you engage in Krishna consciousness, all good qualities come onto you. In other words, good qualities descend in your heart and consciousness. See? And Srila Prabhupada gives a sort of contradiction in good qualities of somebody who's not a devotee in the next paragraph. And then in the following paragraph, he gives how the good qualities come upon a devotee. I'll read. On the other hand, a person who is not in Krishna consciousness has no good qualities. He may be highly educated from the academic point of view, but in the field of his activities, he can be seen to be lesser than the animals. Oh, yes. Even with people who have PhDs and even scientists. I'm reading on. Even though a person is highly educated academically, if he cannot go beyond the sphere of mental activities, then he is sure to perform only material activities and thus remain impure. There are so many persons in the modern world who have been highly educated in the materialistic universities, but it is seen that they cannot take up the movement of Krishna consciousness and develop the high qualities of the demigods. Srila Prabhupada in other places said um, that our process basically of Krishna consciousness, is to develop men and women of character, or boys and girls of character, which the modern materialistic education is not helping in that sense. And Prabhupada gives a nice example in the next paragraph. I'm reading. For example, a Krishna conscious boy, even if he's not very well educated by the university standard, can immediately give up all illicit sex, life, gambling, meat eating, and intoxication. Whereas those who are not in Krishna consciousness, although very highly educated, are often drunkards, meat eaters, sex mongers, and gamblers. These are practical proofs of how a Krishna conscious person becomes highly developed in good qualities, whereas the person who is not in Krishna consciousness cannot do so. We experience that even a young boy in Krishna consciousness is unattached to cinemas, nightclubs, naked dance shows, restaurants, liquor shops, etc. He becomes completely free. He saves his valuable time from being extravagantly spent in the way of smoking, drinking, attending the theater, and dancing. I'll just read the final paragraph in this particular, and then it leads on to more facts about this in the next one, which is happiness and Krishna consciousness. So I'm reading. One who is not in Krishna consciousness usually cannot sit silently even for half an hour. The yoga system teaches that if you become silent, you will realize that you are God. This system may be all right for materialistic persons, but how long will they be able to keep themselves silent? Artificially, they may sit down for so-called meditation, but immediately after the yogic performance, they will engage themselves again in such activities as illicit sex life, gambling, meat eating, and many other nonsensical things. But a Krishna conscious person gradually elevates himself without endeavoring for the so-called silent meditation. Simply because he's engaged in Krishna consciousness, he automatically gives up all this nonsense and develops a high character. One develops the highest character by becoming a devotee of Krishna. The conclusion is that no one can truly have any good qualities if he is lacking in Krishna consciousness. Yes, put me back on the screen. So Srila Prabhupada indicates that this word subhadha, that auspiciousness or pure devotional service is the beginnings of all auspiciousness, or it brings auspiciousness to the people who are not in Krishna consciousness. So therefore, another word for auspiciousness is that it bestows all good fortune on the world, on every living entity, including the other species of life, not only human beings. So the good fortune we discussed here as different, you could say, qualities to it. One is the good fortune to the world is the preacher. And the other is good fortune is that the world is attracted to the preacher because they are made fortunate by the preacher of Krishna consciousness. See? And the third one is here, as it says, devotional service bestows all good qualities on the devotee. And there's another one which is going to come up now. It bestows all happiness, on the devotee. In other words, it's coming to that page and number 10. So I'm going to that page. How the fourth one, it bestows all happiness on the devotee. So I am reading. Go back to the screen. Happiness and Krishna consciousness. So this, like I said, is coming to the point of, in one sense, it comes to the point of, we interchange the numbers. And that means, those in devotional service, they write even the conception of liberation, which indicates that pure devotional service automatically puts one in transcendental pleasure, which is a kind of sudaba, but does not care for happiness from other sources, like dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, which we'll discuss soon. So I am reading. Srila Rupa Goswami has analyzed the different sources of happiness. He has divided happiness into three categories, which are happiness derived from material enjoyment, which is sense gratification, sin. 2, happiness derived from identifying oneself with the Supreme Brahman, which is moksha lagutakrit, or becoming one with God or becoming God. And 3, happiness derived from Krishna consciousness, transcendental pleasure in engaging in devotional service. So I'll just read the next 2 paragraphs, short paragraphs, and then I'll move on. In the Tantra Shastra, Lord Shiva speaks to his wife, Sati, in this way. My dear wife, a person who has surrendered himself at the lotus feet of Govinda and who has thus developed pure Krishna consciousness can be very easily awarded all the perfections desired by the impersonalists. And beyond this, he can enjoy the happiness achieved by the pure devotees, unquote. Happiness derived from pure devotional service is the highest because it is eternal. The happiness derived from material perfection or understanding oneself to be Brahman is inferior because it is temporary. There is no preventing one's falling down from material happiness, and there is even every chance of falling down from the spiritual happiness derived out of identifying oneself with the impersonal Brahman. Now, Srila Prabhupada prior to this defines all auspiciousness as activities beneficial for every living entity. And he quoted one of the best examples of Lord Chaitanya passing through the Jharikanda forest, where even wild animals began chanting Hare Krishna and chanted and danced in ecstasy. Now, Srila Prabhupada, actually, when he was here in Mauritius, he said that Krishna consciousness can bring benefit to every living entity. So one of the devotees who was with Srila Prabhupada here in Mauritius asked Srila Prabhupada, how? How is this kind of possible? Like that. And he tried to explain himself, and he said, we can understand that it brings benefit to human beings, but how does it bring benefit to the animals and plants? It is in the lecture here in Mauritius. And Srila Prabhupada said that when you do Harinam Sankirtan, the animals and plants also hear the holy name and benefit. And the example is also given of the 6 Goswamis, who are great examples of auspiciousness. Dira adira jana priyo karo nirmatsaro pujito. In other words, they are dear both to the ruffians and to the gentle because they are not envious of anyone. And Srila Prabhupada also was the same, being the perfect representative of Lord Chaitanya and the 6 Goswamis. And once on a morning walk, Srila Prabhupada was dealing with all sorts of people in Los Angeles. And somehow or other, Srila Prabhupada was able to please all of them. There were the temple devotees, there were some scientists, there were some devotees' parents, there was all types of people of different ages and from all different backgrounds. And at the end, Srila Prabhupada's secretary commented, Srila Prabhupada, everyone loves you. And Srila Prabhupada said, yes, because I love everyone. So this is Subhada, means that the devotee gives benefit to the whole world and the whole world loves the devotee. So this Moksha Lagutakrit, which is the happiness in Krishna consciousness, which I just read in several short paragraphs, is that pure devotional service. Now we're going into the third characteristic, which is Moksha Lagutakrit. Pure devotional service automatically puts one in transcendental pleasure, which is continued from Subhada, that it is all auspicious at the same time. But this Moksha Lagutakrit actually means that the devotees, they do not care for happiness, which I read, derived from material sense pleasure, like Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Or even they do not they do not care for pleasure coming from becoming one with Brahman, impersonalism, or even trying to become God. They do not care for such pleasures because it is insignificant. Now, there's another type of so-called pleasure that people like to do and show off actually, but it has no real value to it. So let's get back to the book, to the next paragraph. I'm skipping that next one. It's the mystic perfections. Yes, go to the mystic perfections. Good. The mystic perfections achieved by actually successful yogis are 8 in number. And we're going to discuss the 8 now that's coming up. The first one is Anima Siddhi. Refers to the power by which one can become so small that he can enter into a stone. But Srila Prabhupada says modern scientific improvements also enable us to enter into stone because they provide for excavating so many subways, penetrating the hills, etc. So there's no real value to such a city. You don't have to have that city to enter into stone. It can be done by the modern scientists. So that's the first one. Okay. And then the next one is, in a sense, it's called Lagima Siddhi. That's coming up. There's also one called Mahima Siddhi. This is Anima. Then Mahima Siddhi means becoming greater than the greatest. So that's the second one, which is not mentioned here. And then I'm going to the next one, which is basically called Lagima Siddhi. Okay. There's a paragraph below that it starts with the words "of course." Go to that. Go next one. Go. Yes, I'm reading that. Of course, in the categories of mystic perfection, there are certain processes which the material scientists have not yet been able to develop. For instance, a mystic yogi can enter into the sun planet simply by using the rays of the sun. This perfection is called Lagima. Similarly, a yogi can touch the moon with his finger, so on and so forth. So in the same paragraph, if you go further a few lines down, it says Prapti Siddhi. With this Prapti Siddhi, which is the fourth one, the first one is Anima, the second one is Mahima, becoming greater than the greatest, which is not mentioned here. The third one is Lagima, which is becoming lighter than the lightest, and the fourth one is Prapti, and I'm reading. With this Prapti Siddhi, not only can the perfect mystic touch the moon planet, but he can extend his hand anywhere and take whatever he likes. He may be sitting thousands of miles away from a certain place, and if he likes, he can take fruit from a garden. This is Prapti Siddhi. Nice thing, eh? But actually, it's on the material platform. So we have so far Anima, we have Mahima, Lagima, and Prapti 4. Now let's get to the next one. Next paragraph. The modern scientists have manufactured nuclear weapons by which they can destroy an insignificant part of this planet. But by the yoga siddhi known as Isita, one can create and destroy an entire planet simply at will. See? So that is Isita. Another perfection is called Vasita, which is the sixth one. Isita is the fifth one, sixth one is Vasita, and I'm reading. Another perfection is called Vasita, and by this perfection, one can bring anyone under his control. This is the kind of hypnotism which is almost irresistible. See? Sometimes it is found that a yogi who may have attained a little perfection in this Vasita mystic power comes out amongst the people and speaks all sorts of nonsense, controls their mind, exploits them, takes their money, and then goes away. See? So that's the sixth one. Then the next one, next paragraph. There is another mystic perfection which is known as prakamya. By this prakamya power, one can achieve anything he likes. For example, one can make water enter into his eye, then it can come out from within the eye. Simply by his will, he can perform such wonderful activities. And then the final one. The highest perfection of mystic power is called Kama Vasayita. This is also magic, whereas the Prakamya power acts only to create wonderful effects within the scope of nature. Kama Vasayitva permits one to contradict nature. In other words, to do the impossible. Of course, one can derive great amounts of temporary happiness by achieving such yogic materialistic perfections. Good. Now, some stories from Srila Prabhupada about these kind of people who have mystic power. Srila Prabhupada said that there was one yogi who used to sit on the streets of Benares. And that's Varanasi. It is a seat of the impersonalists, and even the yogis go there. But this yogi, he used to sit naked, and it was during the British rule of India. So the British policemen or constables, they came to him and said, you can't just sit naked on the streets, and if you continue doing that, we'll arrest you. He didn't respond at all, and he didn't move. He just remained sitting there. So the police, they warned him again, but he just remained sitting there. He wasn't even bothered about it. So finally, a few of the policemen, they got together, they caught him, arrested him, and put him into jail. And by the yogi's mystic power, who was now in jail, he reduced himself to a very minute size, and he came out through the keyhole in the prison door. And the next thing you knew was that he was sitting on the street naked again. So again, the police got very heavy with him. They arrested the yogi and threw him in jail again. And again, he came out by the same method, through the keyhole, smaller than the smallest, which means, animosity. Then Srila Prabhupada told another story about one of his teachers who was a follower, one of his teachers, in Scottish Church's College. was a follower or admirer of a yogi in Calcutta. And once the teacher told the students how he had gone to this particular yogi, and the yogi asked his admirers what they would like. Anything they wanted, he would get it for them. So they said, we would like some nice pomegranates. So at that time, there was no pomegranates available in Calcutta. It was not the season. So by the mystic, city known as Prapti city, you can get anything from wherever you want. You just put your hand in, it comes like that. He brought one freshly cut branch of pomegranate tree into the room, and they all had nice, fresh pomegranates. So what does this mean? Just two examples I have given. What's the value of this? There's no real value. Because with a few paisa, you can even buy one pomegranate when it comes in season. That's the value. That's the value in that sense. So actually, the devotee is not interested in material happiness at all, even this kind of mystic yogic powers of happiness. Even if one is interested in material happiness, he can get more from Krishna than from all these 8 mystic perfections put together. Because Krishna is known as Yatra Yogeshvara Krishna, Yatra Partha Danudara. That Krishna is known as Yogeshvara, who is the master of all mystic powers. One other friend in Calcutta came to Srila Prabhupada, and he also just came from visiting some yogi who produced an apple, and then he cut that apple into little slices and he offered it to his admirers as if it's Mahaprasad. It's like you're getting the slice of apple from this yogi and you're thinking that this slice of apple is better than if I cut an apple into a slice and take. It's coming from this yogi, in inverted commas, as if it's Mahaprasad. So he was a well-known gentleman, in Bengal. And he was a friend of Srila Prabhupada, and his name was Tarun Kanti Ghosh. So when he visited Srila Prabhupada, he mentioned what the yogi had done. And immediately, Srila Prabhupada, just using common sense, said, we are not interested in his magic. We're interested in Krishna's magic. And Krishna is Yogeshvara. And he is producing so many apple trees. And each apple tree is producing so many apples. And in each apple, there are so many seeds. And within each seed, there is another apple tree with so many apples. So if we make friends with Krishna, he can give us as many apples as we want, not just one apple, or not even just one slice of an apple. And then Srila Prabhupada said, practically we have experienced this. And Prabhupada said, I went to America without anything. And now we have so many centers all over the world. And in every center, we are distributing so many apples. And where are all those apples coming from? We're not going to the office to work or going to some factory, but Krishna is supplying the apples. So if we make friends with Krishna, then we can get every benefit. So therefore, Krishna consciousness puts one in transcendental pleasure. And one is not interested in the pleasure coming from material sense gratification, neither in becoming one with the Supreme, or neither in the happiness derived from yogic mystic powers. All right. Let's take some questions or comments if you have. Anyone?
So far, no one is asking anything, Maharaj.
Good. I mean, in sense, it's okay, but at the same time, it's good in the sense I can move on. Yes. So now we're going to get to number 4, which I said is a little bit different, which is called Sudulabha. That means pure devotional service is rarely achieved. And I'm going to read about that. We're on page number 14 in the textbook. Can you go to that? The rareness of pure devotional service, that means it is rarely achieved. That means not everyone is fortunate to get it. Okay. So I'm reading, and I'm going to read about 1 page in this section about this. The rareness of pure devotional service. In the preliminary phase of spiritual life, there are different kinds of austerities, penances, and similar processes for attaining self-realization. However, even if an executor of these processes is without any material desire, he still cannot achieve devotional service. And aspiring by oneself alone to achieve devotional service is also not very hopeful, because Krishna does not agree to award devotional service to merely anyone. Krishna can easily offer a person material happiness or even liberation, but he does not agree very easily to award a person engagement in his devotional service. Devotional service can in fact be attained only through the mercy of a pure devotee. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 19, text 151, it is said, quote, by the mercy of the spiritual master who is a pure devotee, and by the mercy of Krishna, one can achieve the platform of devotional service. There is no other way, unquote. The rarity of devotional service is also confirmed in the Tantra Shastra, where Lord Shiva says to Sati, my dear Sati, if one is a very fine philosopher, analyzing the different processes of knowledge, he can achieve liberation from the material entanglement. By performance of the ritualistic sacrifices recommended in the Vedas, one can be elevated to the platform of pious activities and thereby enjoy the material comforts of life to the fullest extent. But all such endeavors can hardly offer anyone devotional service, not even if one tries for it by such processes for many, many thousands of births. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is also confirmed by Prahlad Maharaj that merely by personal efforts or by the instructions of higher authorities, one cannot attain to the stage of devotional service. One must become blessed by the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee who is completely freed from the contamination of material desires. In the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th chapter, verse 18, Narada also says to Yudhishthira, my dear king, it is Lord Krishna, known as Mukunda, who is the eternal protector of the Pandavas and the Yadus. He is also your spiritual master and instructor in every respect. He is the only worshipable God for you. He is very dear and affectionate, and he is the director of all your activities, both individual and familial. And what's more, he sometimes carries out your orders as if he were your messenger. My dear king, how very fortunate you are, because for all others, these favors given to you by the Supreme Lord would not even be dreamt of. The purport to this verse is that the Lord easily offers liberation, but he rarely agrees to offer a soul devotional service, because by devotional service, the Lord becomes purchased by the devotee. Amazing, really, really amazing, the rarity of pure devotional service. Now, This rarity or sudulabha, pure devotional service is rarely achieved, is very, very difficult to come to or obtain for two reasons. One is that it is very difficult because unless one is attached to Krishna, he cannot attain devotional perfection. Even if he renders devotional service for a very, very long time, or even maybe many lifetimes. And the second is that Krishna does not easily deliver perfection in devotional service. And we read why. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada translates in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that if one performs masses of service without attachment to Krishna, he cannot come to, at least from Sadhana-Bhakti to Bhagavad-Bhakti, from devotional service and practice to devotional service and ecstasy. Because Bhagavad-Bhakti specifically is what is being discussed here. And this is very difficult to obtain and very rare. How to come to get this rarity of perfection in devotional service? And Srila Prabhupada explains that one must be blessed, actually blessed by the mercy of the devotee. By one's endeavor or by the endeavors of others or by the combination of one's own endeavor and the endeavor of others, one cannot come really to the perfection of Krishna consciousness. One can only come to Krishna consciousness if one is blessed by the mercy of the devotee. One can't develop Krishna consciousness just by one's own efforts. But if one is favored by the dust of the lotus feet of the pure devotee, then one can take to Krishna consciousness. In this respect, one disciple asked Srila Prabhupada that Lord Chaitanya wrote Rishi Shastakam prayers. And then he asked Srila Prabhupada, which is the most important? And how is the spiritual master the most important? But is there any mention of the spiritual master in the Shastakam prayers? Because one must be blessed by the lotus feet, the dust on the lotus feet of a pure devotee, which includes Shiksha and Diksha Gurus. So is there any mention of the spiritual master in the Shastakam prayers? And Srila Prabhupada replied, yes. And he immediately responded, Trinadapi Sunechena, Tarorapi Sahisnuna, Amanena Manadena, Ketanya Sadahari. And then he said that if we actually become humble, then we can surrender to the lotus feet of the spiritual masters and get their mercy and make advancement. So essentially here, one needs mercy. One should act in such a way that one attracts mercy to come to Krishna consciousness and engage in the practice of devotional service, which is called Sadhana-Bhakti. However, the mercy of the devotee also comes in some kind of installments. So when we need the mercy of the devotee to actually come to the higher feature or internal, deeper feature of Bhava Bhakti, and then ultimately to Prema Bhakti in Krishna consciousness. And there is a very nice example about such mercy, about the relationship between the mercy and the relationship of one's own effort in spiritual practices of sadhana. And that beautiful example is Mother Yasoda and Krishna. Now we know that when Mother Yasoda, she tried to bind Krishna, she wasn't able to bind Krishna. If you are aware of the pastime of the Damodar Leela. If you do not be aware, then we could discuss that in a full session in another time after we complete Nectar of Devotion. So no matter how many ropes Mother Yasoda brought, she couldn't bind Krishna. Even she brought all the ropes practically in the whole of Vraj Mandala, which like, kilometers and kilometers of rope, kilometers of rope. But she still couldn't bind Krishna. And the ropes were always mystically remaining 2 fingers too short, like 2 inches too short. Now, when Krishna observed Mother Yasoda's great efforts to bind him with the rope, and he saw how she was perspiring, and the perspiration was like, some jewels of perspiration that were falling from her, he became so attracted to Mother Yasoda's form, when she was perspiring like that. And she was so much in anxiety and earnestness that in the endeavors that she wants to bind him. And in the consciousness, she feels that I have to tie this boy. I have to bind him because he may run away from home, so on and so forth. And also I have to tie him up because that means that he's going to be disciplined. So Krishna understood her intentions to tie him up so that he wouldn't get into any more trouble. So when he saw there's so much effort to the extreme of Mother Yasoda to bind him, then he allowed himself to be bound by Mother Yasoda. So we have to engage in a similar way in our spiritual practices. And at the same time, pray. Like similar way means efforts of Mother Yasoda to bind Krishna. At the same time, we have to pray for the mercy of Krishna and the Vaishnavas. And that means those 2 fingers too short. One is Mother Yasoda's efforts to bind Krishna, and the other is Krishna's mercy to be allowed to be bound by Mother Yasoda. See? So when Krishna and the Vaishnavas are satisfied with our efforts and practices and endeavors in Krishna consciousness, then they will immediately, show their mercy and allow us to come closer to them, which means also allowing us to come closer to Krishna. So that's a very wonderful, one of the best examples in this regard of our efforts and Krishna's mercy and how we attract Krishna's mercy. All right. Now, yesterday we also discussed a bit about, you could say, the anathas or the unwanted creepers that will stifle the bhakti to be the devotional people. And the word is really called anathas, unwanted desires, sprouting up as weeds. But when we are blessed by the mercy of devotees, and therefore the mercy of Krishna follows the mercy of the devotees. It's not the other way around. So when we're blessed by the mercy of the devotees, then Krishna immediately blesses us with his mercy, following the mercy of the devotees. And when that actually happens in our lives in Krishna consciousness, the anathas or the unwanted desires which may sprout up like weeds, which we discussed yesterday, they do not really become obstacles or impediments in our practice and devotional service. That means the other desires in the form of anathas, they do not really sort of come up in the sense that you will have the potency not to act on them. Not to act on them. So one disciple approached Srila Prabhupada and he said, Srila Prabhupada, I cannot control my mind and senses. And then Srila Prabhupada asked, what do you mean? He said, this desire for sense gratification, especially sex desire, is always, hounding me like a ghost. So what should I do? So Srila Prabhupada said, you took a vow to follow the 4 regulated principles, and what it is no illicit sex life. So Srila Prabhupada said, you took the vow of no illicit sex life. but you didn't take the vow of no sex life. So you know what to do? He said, yes, Srila Prabhupada, I believe I should be married. See? So, in other words, such a desire may come up, but one can enter into the regulative principles of Grihastha life in Krishna conscious activities and act on them, but in a regulated way that you can become purified of that desire. On the other hand, for someone who's actually blessed, more and more by the pure devotees, even if the desire is coming up within the mind, or even if the desire is coming up even within preaching, sometimes one preaches, and sometimes one will see someone or something, and that will agitate you internally and may come up in your mind. See? So therefore, it is very important that if somebody is blessed by such pure devotees, even if the desire comes up, one will not act on them. See? It will only be practically in the mind. And it will not really agitate the senses. And it will not really... Hare Krishna. It will not really agitate, it will only be in the mind. But from the mind, if it agitates the senses, and if it responds to you to take action, to act on it, on the agitated senses, that's a little different. But such a devotee, when one is blessed by pure devotees, even if these materialistic anathas or desires come up in the mind, it will stay there and one will have the potency not to even plan or act on them. Such is the mercy of devotees. See? Now, therefore, the only qualification in this sense that's required is that one has to be just sincere in one's efforts to practice Krishna consciousness. And what is that sincerity? It simply means that I have decided that I simply want to serve Krishna and not my senses. And even if the senses may say so many things to the agents of the mind, or the mind may say so many things, still I will not listen to my mind and senses. And I'll just listen to who? I will just listen to the Vaishnavas, I will listen to the Gurus, and I will listen to Krishna. That is pure devotional service. And that type of pure devotional service ripens from Bhava Bhakti in ecstasy into Prema Bhakti. And then one's minds and senses will not tell you anything save and except to serve Krishna. Save and except to serve Krishna. So this is the most important thing, to be blessed by the dust of the lotus feet of the Vaishnavas and one's instructing and initiating spiritual masters, as well as Radha and Krishna. Okay? We have any questions or comments? Anyone?
Haribol. Hare Krishna Maharaj. Haribol Maharaj.
Come onto the screen. Bhaskar, Prabhu, tell us, please.
Yes, my question is that, Maharaj, the mercy comes once off, or it is on regular basis?
Put me onto the screen. Put me onto the screen. So, Bhaskar, Prabhu, do you want the mercy only once or you want it continuous?
I want it continuous.
Yes, but you have to play your part.
Yes.
In other words, in order to continuously receive mercy, one should continuously practice Krishna consciousness and not give up the practices.
Yes.
Is that all right, Bhaskar?
Yes, because many think that such mercy is once off. and then
No,
he can live happily.
the mercy is a constant flow once it comes. But you need to constantly also continue and be steady in your
Yes.
practices in Krishna consciousness.
Very
Because
good.
that
Thank you.
means you come to from Sadhana-Bhakti to Bhagavata, which means ecstasy, and Prema Bhakti, pure love of Krishna, which is the ultimate stage in our formations or practices in Krishna consciousness.
Very good.
Next question.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Very good.
Next question. Anyone? Even from previous classes, if you'd like to ask, you're welcome.
Maharaj, I have a question, Maharaj.
Can you come on the screen?
Yes, Maharaj. Maharaj, what is the difference between following the footstep and imitate? Because I regularly see in Prabhupada's books, they say one should follow the footstep but not imitate. So what does it mean exactly?
Srila Prabhupada explains that imitation of a good thing is desire. And an example is given in this regard. Just like the mother and father will be taking the bead bag and chanting Hare Krishna, right?
Yes.
And the little child, 3-4 years of age or maybe younger, he sees the mother and father chanting. And he'll ask the mother, what is my bead? What is my beads? So then they buy him a set of beads and they get him a bead bag. And then he sees his mother and father chanting, and he also takes he may just chant for a few minutes, and after that he's going to play with his toys. And after playing with his toys, he may come back and take the bead back and see his mother and father continue to chant, and he chants. So he's imitating the mother and father. So imitation of a good thing is good. Imitation of a bad thing is bad. That's one answer. The other answer is that we cannot prematurely imitate an advanced stage in Krishna consciousness. We cannot really do that. See? So that we should be careful for. So the best way in order to be careful not to imitate an advanced stage of devotional service is because somebody who is advanced do not know that they are advanced. Others may see them as advanced, but they themselves are not aware of it, that they are advanced. And what is their actions and activities and behavior? They see all others as more advanced, and therefore they have come to the perfection of Krishna consciousness in being pleasing to all devotees and all living entities and serving every Vaishnava as much as they can without any discrimination. That's the point we should come to. So in that sense, one will be safe in not imitating an advanced state artificially when one is not on it. That'll be a safe position. Is that all right?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay.
You.
Let's take the next.
Kevala Bhakti Prabhu. Kevala Bhakti Prabhu has a question.
I'm not sure if you can hear me, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
I can hear you and I can see you. Please go ahead.
Just regarding blessings, I'm curious, Maharaj, if devotees, if in our devotional practice, if we don't actively seek blessings, or if when blessings come their way, we don't, let's say, accept them. Let's say this is just because our ego. Does Krishna eventually stop arranging these blessings for you, or will they continue to come until you eventually get it?
The answer is an emphatic no. It works like this. Or it is like this. It envelops and develops like this. Is that, you can put me on the screen? Hare Krishna. All we have to do is become attached to somebody who you know is pure. And attachment develops in your heart for that person who you feel is pure in Krishna consciousness by serving that person. So when you serve somebody who is pure in Krishna consciousness, or who is strict and serious in the Krishna consciousness practices, not because they want to be strict, they may appear to be strict. See, it's like one can be strict with oneself, but liberal in relation to others. So that kind of strictness the person may have. But at the same time, he's not pushing his or her strictness onto others. So when you look for somebody in which you have a fearful respect for, in other words, the respect is there, but it's also a kind of fearful respect. It is not a bad thing, this kind of fear. So fearful respect means that when I am associating with this personality, and when I serve this personality, I know I have to be careful and not say and do the wrong things. So that's fearful respect. Now, which is good for you, which is very good for one. See, very good for one. So therefore, immediately in that association of that personality, who's pure in his actions, thoughts, words, and deeds, and behavior, you immediately become like that. But it only lasts to the degree that you associate personally with that person. So after you leave that association of that person, it may last even for some days or for some weeks that you are also like that person, not imitating, but then the old habits come up again. See? But that person that you're associated with, that pure devotee, that advanced devotee, you have pleased that devotee. And because you have pleased that devotee has you in his or her heart. That connection should never be lost. Even if one is not strong in one's own spiritual practices. And I'm reading from the Bhagavad-Gita about this, which I read actually previously. And you may not have been in the classes prior to the Nectar of Devotion. I gave about 5 or 6 classes before we started the Nectar of Devotion on the 13th of April.
Yes, I think I missed those.
You missed that. So I'll just read this for you. How is this so evident by Srila Prabhupada in the scriptures? This is chapter. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this is chapter 13 in the Bhagavad Gita, and it's a group of verses from text 8 to 12. And in the first verse, which is, text number 8, it goes as follows. Amanitvam adambitvam ahimsa shantirajyavam acharya upasanam socham stairyam atma vinigraha. And Prabhupada uses the word acharya upasanam there. And he uses this word quite frequently throughout his translation and purports, including in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And the actual word means, acharya upasana, goes like approaching a bona fide spiritual master. See? So now, Srila Prabhupada explains this a little bit more of approaching a bona fide spiritual master. I am looking for that place. Approaching a bona fide spiritual. I found it. Okay. It's in the purport which begins with the paragraph simplicity means. Can you put it on the screen? It's very important. Go up, go up. Okay, good. That's good. That's good. Yeah. As for acceptance of the spiritual master, that is essential. Because without the instruction of a bona fide spiritual master, one cannot progress in the spiritual science. One should approach the spiritual master with all humility and offer him all services so that he will be pleased to bestow his blessings upon the disciple. Now, the word spiritual master is actually in the plural in many senses throughout Prabhupada's books. So now I'm continuing to read. This is the most important line. Because a bona fide spiritual master is a representative of Krishna, either Shiksha or Diksha Gurus, any one of them. Because a bona fide spiritual master is a representative of Krishna, if he bestows any blessings upon his disciple, we're looking for those blessings in your question, right? If he bestows any blessings upon his disciple, that will make the disciple immediately advanced without the disciples following the regulative principles. Can you imagine such deep compassion? Without the disciple even following the regulative principles. So what does this mean? Because prior to that, that disciple, get me onto the screen. Oh no, wait, let me read the last one. Let me read the last sentence. The last sentence, sorry. The last sentence is a different sentence. It says, or the regulative principle will be easier for one who has served the spiritual master without reservation. So that's a different point entirely. But what I'm focusing on, I'll read again. Because a bona fide spiritual master is a representative of Krishna, if he bestows any blessings upon his disciple, that will make the disciple immediately advance without the disciples following the regulative principles. This is not a mistake. It is actually in the microfiche preservation records in the Bhakti-Vedanta archives. It is as it is. So therefore, the most important aspect, even if one is weak, or even if one is not able to follow nicely, even after initiation or even before initiation, at least be attached to that type of personality. And that personality will pull you out in your darkest hour. Just become attached to at least even one. But what to speak of one? More than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, better. See, you get more people easily accessible in that category. So just become attached to one personality. At the same time, we find that is Srila Prabhupada's depth of his compassion. It's like, I'll give you a practical example of the depth of his compassion. Okay. In case, he is pure in the sense that, although he may have apparently externally did other activities that may not consider be favorable, pure in Krishna consciousness. And his name is Brahmananda Prabhu. Brahmananda Prabhu was the first temple president in ISKCON in 26 Second Avenue. Okay. And one time Srila Prabhupada, it's quite amazing, actually. One time, Srila Prabhupada said, and Brahmananda is my first disciple. So Kirtanananda Prabhu at that time was also in the room. So Kirtanananda Prabhu said, no, Srila Prabhupada, I was initiated before him. See, I was initiated before him. But Prabhupada regarded Brahmananda Prabhu as his first disciple. And Krishnananda Prabhu sort of, in a sort of light way, Prabhupada, I was initiated before him. So I'm your first disciple. See? And then Srila Prabhupada said, yes, Kirtan comes first and then Brahman. In other words, Kirtanananda, Kirtan, and Brahmananda, then Brahman. So Prabhupada just discounted it like that. So you could see how dear, how dear Brahmananda Prabhu was to Srila Prabhupada, or still is to Srila Prabhupada eternally. So we find that in the course of Brahmananda Prabhu's devotional life, Srila Prabhupada also gave him sannyas. And we are aware that, he also left the sannyas ashram. And, he was in other places. But finally, when I was also serving as temple president in Vrindavan in about 20 years ago, actually, Brahmananda Prabhu was living there in the MVT with his brother Gargamuni Prabhu. So I used to visit him, and he used to come and see me in the office sometimes, but I used to go more to him. And his association was so lovable, so lovable. So one time there was a devotee in a clinic, an Ayurvedic clinic in Kerala. It's in South India, a neighbor to Tamil Nadu. And he is from that area, and his name at that time was Sarvaishvarya Prabhu. And then later he took sannyas as Bhaktivinoda Swami. So he related something to me that Brahmananda Prabhu so told him. And then when I met Brahmananda after that, I confirmed whether it's true. He said yes, like that. So Sarveshwar Prabhu was telling me that Brahmananda Prabhu and him were in the same Ayurvedic clinic in Kerala. And early in the morning, because the treatment normally begins about 8, 9 o'clock. So devotees were there, they have, enough time to chant their japa. So early in the morning, Sarveshwarya Prabhu at that time, now His Holiness Bhaktivinoda Swami, he was chanting his japa. And while chanting his japa, then one morning he noticed another devotee, but wearing like a bhakta pants. He goes close and he says it's Brahmananda Prabhu. Wearing a kurta and a white, like pajama pants or something. So he got enlightened. Oh, another devotee is here. So in the course of their stay, of overlap of some days in their stays, so he asked various questions to Brahmananda Prabhu about Srila Prabhupada. And finally, before he could leave, he asked Brahmananda Prabhu, what is the most important instruction from Srila Prabhupada that we should follow? And what is the most important connection and attachment that we have to Srila Prabhupada? So Brahmananda Prabhu simply said, no matter what happens, no matter what your difficulties are, never stop chanting your japa, especially in the morning, like you're doing. Like you're doing. So that was very important and instructive from Prabhupada and in relation to Brahmananda Prabhu to Srila Prabhupada. So Sarveshwara Prabhu, His Holiness Bhaktivinoda Swami now, he noticed also that although Brahmananda Prabhu told him that this is what Prabhupada said, this is our connection to Srila Prabhupada. See? Then he, with hesitancy, he approached Brahmananda Prabhu. He said, I chant my rounds in the morning, but I don't see you chanting your rounds in the morning. Okay. So Brahmananda Prabhu just immediately said, that's precisely the point. That's precisely the point, that because I was not chanting my rounds, sometimes this happened to me. That's precisely the point. Still, another devotee told me something about Brahmananda Prabhu. And it was quite amazing. Quite amazing. In India, when Prabhupada gave sannyas first to Brahmananda Prabhu, but then in India, Prabhupada gave sannyas to Gargamuni Prabhu, and he was leading a book distribution library party and traveling in India as Gargamuni Swami. So one time, sort of like another devotee who's also late now, but a wonderful devotee, is actually a Damvasi, Bengali Vaishnava, and born in the area of Navadvip. His name, Prabhupada named him Shamlal Prabhu. So Shamlal Prabhu told me something very interesting. And in the course of that sort of discussion, I forget the details offhand now, but in the course of the discussion with his brother, and Brahmananda Prabhu's brother, Gagamuni Swami at that time, something happened. See? And I believe somebody, or maybe even Shamlal was saying somebody, I'm not sure who, was criticizing Brahmananda Prabhu because he may have become weak spiritually. See? So this came to the attention of Srila Prabhupada. And this is like a very, very exceptional cases. It's not to be imitated in what I'm about to say. So Srila Prabhupada met with Shamal Prabhu and Gagamuni Swami at that time and others, or something to that effect. And he said that, who is criticizing Brahmananda? So nobody said anything. And then he said that even if you see Brahmananda smoking a cigarette, you should bow down to him. That's how much Srila Prabhupada has Brahmananda in his heart. And we know he went back to Godhead, or he went back to Prabhupada's lotus feet when he left several years now, when he left us several years in the holy land of Sri Vrindavan. I just thought I'll share that with you. And there are many such instances with devotees, who are connected to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada is very, very also attached to them because they pleased him in so many ways. Okay. We have time for one more question.
Thank you, Maharaj.
You're welcome. Time for one more question. We have like 3-4 minutes left. Anyone?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes, Hare Krishna, Anjana Gopinath. Tell me your question.
Maharaj, is possible we can practice pure devotional service from the very beginning with doing Krishna consciousness?
Okay, put me back onto the screen. All right. Now, when the sun rises, what is that called? What is that period called? It's called dusk or dawn. What's it called?
Dawn.
Beginning, when night breaks into day, what's that called?
Dawn.
Dawn. So, when night breaks into day, can you see the sun? Yes or no?
No.
No.
Then when dawn is over, then you get the sun's rays coming up. Now then you get actually a feature called Aruni. It's like a reddish hue. From the reddish hue comes the sun's rays, like brilliant. And from the sun's rays, then appears the sun, and then the rays emanate from it. See? So similarly, when night breaks into day, which is called dawn, that is the beginning stages of our Krishna consciousness coming out from the darkness into the beginning of light. And when that happens, we know that the light is just beginning, but we don't have to wait long. Then it becomes a little bit more brighter in terms of the reddish hue of the sun, which is the daughter of the sun god called Alumi. And then from the reddish hue comes forth the sun's rays. See? So from the period of dawn to prior to the sun's rays is called Sadhana-Bhakti. And when the sun's rays comes out, that is called Bhava-Bhakti. So Sadhana-Bhakti is called devotional service and practice. Bhava-Bhakti calls devotional service and ecstasy. And then when the sun's rays come up fully, the sun comes up with it, and that is called Prema Bhakti. See? So within Prema Bhakti, which is like the sun, is the feature of dawn, night breaking into day, included or not? Is it included? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. So therefore, the feature of dawn, night breaking into day, is included in the reddish hue, which is Aruni. And the reddish hue is included in the sun's rays. And the sun's rays are included in the sun. So therefore, the beginning stages of Krishna consciousness and the formative stages, which is called Sadhana-Bhakti before the rays of the sun, is within the sun, as well as the sun's rays, Bhava-Bhakti, which is the first rays of the sun of Prema. So pure devotional service is always there. Even within the practice of pure devotional service, like the dawn period and the reddish hue and the sun's rays are within the sun. Without the sun, you will not get dawn. So without Prema Bhakti, you will not get the feature or presence of the dawn or the reddish hue or the sun's rays. So therefore, when we practice Sadhana Bhakti, it's part of Prema Bhakti, is part of pure devotional service, as much as the dawn or reddish hue and the rays are part of the sun. Is that all right?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for listening in today and giving us your nice association once again. And we will look forward to your association again tomorrow. Shiva Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Devotee Vaishnava Brhat ki.
Jai.
Swami Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Devotion.
Jai.
Ki.
Jai.
Hari
Hari Bo. Thank you so much, Maharaj. See you tomorrow. Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj.